beats. All right, so first off, you'll see that I'm no longer in MuseScore, which was my notation app. I'm now in Logic Pro X, which is my DAW or digital audio workstation of choice. What I've done is I've exported the MIDI files from MuseScore. There's a really handy feature that lets you export MIDI and then import it, and then you can manipulate it in your DAW. So it'll actually take all of the parts, the bass, the melody, the piano, and it will separate them out onto tracks like this. And so it's super handy to be able to apply various arrangement techniques and manipulate the sound data without having to do a whole lot of work on that end. So first off, a few things. When I imported all four parts, I noticed that it was feeling not quite Mario-esque. And I realized that a lot of that had to do with the fact that there is a very distinct 16th note triplet feel in the Super Mario World series. Basically, it's, in other words, there's a swung 16th note feel. So it's more of a swung than a triplet. It could be notated either way, because triplets are basically just swung eighths, swung eighths or swung 16ths are basically just triplets with no eighth note in the middle. So the toy piano sound was perfect for this, and I'll go ahead and play it for you now. This is what I added. So it is a little kind of out of tune, but that's a common problem with Super Nintendo samples, is a lot of their intonation is off. But I like it. I actually kind of like it. It's probably like a few cents flat. So it's not like perfectly in tune, but I really like it. I think it adds like a childlike quality, and the dun 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 was something that was really missing throughout the song. And so I think that adds a lot. It's very percussive, so I think that's cool too. All right, so let's move on to the next track here, the lap harp. So what I did here was I actually added the bass part an octave higher. So it gives it a little more richness, kind of thickens the bass part there, and also the striding chords. I added those an octave above, obviously, there as well. So that was helpful. Here's the bass. It is so in the Super Mario World Overworld theme. The bass sample is some sort of brass that I couldn't really emulate very well, so I ended up having to take some of the brass samples that I have in my library from the Super Nintendo and really kind of Frankenstein it, and just really kind of change the attack and delay. And I'll show you about that in a minute when I show you my samples and how I get these sounds. I felt like the lead was feeling kind of thin, so I added this trumpet / alto sax, which is a layered sample, and it sounds like this. So listen to the melody on the steel drums without the alto sax there. Now with the extra layer. And so it might even be still a touch too loud, but I like the sort of thickness that it brings. And it just sort of the attack on the steel drum is very sharp, as well as it's got a very low it doesn't have much sustain. So I like the fact that the trumpet and the alto sax can kind of come in and thicken that out. Okay, so the next thing I did was sort of a call and response thing, and I'm going to take a quick second to just mention that if you're wondering how I got these Super Nintendo sounds, I am going to get to that. I want to make sure I spend enough time on that, so I want to sort of get this arrangement part out of the way first. But I will show you guys how I get these Super Nintendo sounds. In short, I use Impact Soundworks Super Audio Cart, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. So fear not. But this particular part, what I did was sort of a call and response segment for the B section. This area here is the B section. So I had the trumpet and alto sax play the melody part. The steel drums respond, and then back and forth. You can see this is where the steel drum plays, or the alto sax plays. So the call and response. What I did was I'm opening up the automation window here. This thing that says pan, panning is basically how far to the left or to the right your sound is. So I thought it would be cool, because there was some panning in the original Super Mario World song, to pan the call and response sections, hard left, hard right, and then this here. Sorry, let me open. This is actually set to volume. Let me put this pan so you can see that when they do the further call and response, which is in the C section. The C section goes really heavy on the call and response sort of idea. It's really far. The panning is pretty extreme. So here's how it sounds, and pay attention to kind of where you can hear the left and the right. The left where you hear sounds in the left and the right channels. And so on and so forth. And then of course I looped it. So that is the arrangement of the song. Let me show you how I apply these sounds. So I purchased the Super Audio Cart by Impact Soundworks a few years ago, and it is an incredible tool that allows you to capture pretty much, you can see here are all the samples, or all the systems. You can get, ostensibly every single sound that was ever made by these systems. NES, Sega Genesis, Famicom, Sega Master System, Commodore 64, the Game Boy, which is different than the NES. There's different channel structures there, and then even the Atari 2600. So the Super Nintendo samples are on point. They are very accurate, meticulously sampled. I realized that you could theoretically go and find all these samples, but that would be so much work. Look at all this. These are all accessible. You have winds, voice, synth, strings, piano, percussion, organs, orchestral stuff, mallets, keys, guitar, effects, ethnic, drum kit, choir, brass, bass. So all that stuff is stuff that's been used on the Super Nintendo, and you could technically go out and find those samples probably and make your own instrument in Contact or your sample program of choice, but that would honestly take a long time, and I figured it'd be easier just to pick this up. I think it was like $130, and I love it. It's my most used instrument for sure, just because I love making chiptune style music, and so I use this a lot. What's very cool about this particular setup is that if you see, I have 3 layers here, right? So I have the red, the purple, the yellow. These are all playing simultaneously. So you can actually layer different sounds. So you can get really creative because you can do things like layer Super Nintendo with Sega Genesis, with Game Boy, with Famicom, whatever. I mean, really, the sky's the limit. Here they even have different sort of templates or patches that they've set up that come preloaded with the instrument that give you certain iconic sounds or just interesting things to kind of spur on your inspiration. Super Audio World is the one that I'm using right now, and it's basically the Super Mario World. It's modeled after the Super Mario World Overworld instruments. So this is a really cool thing. Like with a few clicks, I could theoretically turn this into a chiptune song by selecting the NES Pulse, and the triangle channel for the bass, all that stuff. So this is a really great instrument. I highly recommend it. You can get it from Impact Soundworks. Maybe in the future I'll do a more comprehensive demo of it. I'll just show you this real quick because I geek out on this stuff. But if you go into the settings here, you can literally alter every parameter of the sound, the volume envelope, whether it's velocity sensitive or not, if there's a vibrato, the vibrato speed, there's any sort of portamento or legato, gliding, how much time there is there, the pitch bend range. You can change the filter envelope. You can change all that stuff. And there's even an arpeggiator. So, I mean, really, you can spend a ton of time in this thing and make some pretty amazing stuff. There's some effects here. So you have like an EQ, a compressor, a bit crusher, scream, delay. So you can alter it even more. So even just beyond chiptunes, you can make some really cool creations with this that sort of challenge the limits of traditional chiptune instruments. There's even a modulation matrix, which you can get really fancy in if you're familiar with synthesis at all. So there you go, guys. That is creating, composing, arranging a Super Mario World style song from scratch. I hope you guys enjoyed this series, and I hope that you feel that it could be something maybe you could hear in a Super Mario game. Obviously, it's sacrilegious to compare myself to Koji Kondo, but regardless, I am happy with how it turned out. I think it captures at least a part of that Super Mario essence. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm going to end this video by playing this melody over the Super Mario World footage so that you can see it in its natural habitat and see if it fits well. Thanks so much for watching, guys.